Hey there, it's Gabriele, and I'm back with Katie Gurwell. Katie, I'm so happy to share this time with you.
It's so great to be here with you, Gabrielle. Thank you for having me.
We are going to take a little bit of a 30,000 feet view of things. I feel like often what I'm talking about here is sort of practical strategies or particular diagnoses or more specifics. And it occurs to me, or it occurred to me, Katie and I have a group that we run together for women, women of a certain age. And at the last meeting of that group, I had a little bit of an epiphany. And so I'll share that here. And then I'll sort of share the conversation that emerged afterwards. But a lot of the women that, many of the women that we see in the group and that, Katie, that you see in your practice, and so that's why you're here to talk, as a psychotherapist, are dealing with fallout from their childhoods. And they feel almost universally like they were not seen, like they were not heard, like they were not accepted for who they were. And so that, in this epiphany that was very clear to me at the time, that I'm hoping to be able to put this into words now, is sort of the ones, that's kind of the thread, the end. It's not the end of the journey, but it is one side of this continuum. And the work that I'm doing with children is at the other end of this continuum. So for many of you watching, you are parents of what we call orchid kids. These are the kids who are challenging and willful and stubborn and may or may not have a diagnosis of some kind. And they really tax your patience and your parenting. They make you feel like a bad parent, or that's how it feels sometimes. And they are challenging to be with, and they're challenging to live with. And so part of my work with the kids is with their parents to understand the relationship and what's happening in that dynamic. And number one, why your kids are triggering you, why they are behaving in the ways that they do. And so that those orchid kids can grow up to not have to have experienced the level of, it's kind of like being an outcast in your own family at some level. So that they won't have to feel like an outcast in their family. Now, can we guarantee that outcome? No, because at some point everybody feels like an outcast, right, Katie?
Yeah.
But so
I think that's part of the human journey.
Part of the human journey, exactly. And so I think all of that being said is a very long preamble to this notion that, and there's a beautiful poem by Khalil Gibran on children, it's called On Children, that basically says our kids are from us, but they're not us, and they don't really belong to us. And that feels like a very seminal kind of starting point if we are then going to nurture them for who they are and who they will become. Katie, jump in here. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And, when you say that, some part of me is like, hey, parents, put me out of business.
Yes.
Not that it's, that when kids struggle, it's not all the parents' fault, but there are some things that can be really helpful. And I know one thing that I've been starting to do with my clients, and I just see adult clients in my work now. When I first started out, I was seeing children and adolescents as well, but is I talk to them from like the perspective of the highest self of their parents and try to give them messages that they needed back then that for whatever reason their parent wasn't able to give them. And sometimes it's about a particular incident or incidents, and sometimes it's just about kind of the, how it was generally at home and in the family. And that seems to be really healing for them, So the two of us got kind of fired up because we were talking after this women's group that we lead and about your epiphany, or about how the connection, the continuum, and started like saying like, oh, let's do a podcast on like real talk for parents,
Yeah.
So I would love to just share the poem now, and then we can go from there.
Let's do it.
And some of you might have heard of this. Khalil Gibran he was a poet and writer from Lebanon, but moved here when he was a child, and was a contemporary of Auguste Rodin and Alfred Knopf. And he also was an artist. I think he's known most for his writing, but he also did art, which is, I was reading his biography before he met. So this is from his book called The Prophet. And in the book, it has a woman saying, tell us about children. And so this is what he says, and it's called On Children. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable.
I mean, need we say more? It's such a powerful message. They are not us.
Yeah.
And they don't belong to us. And their results are not ours, which both means it's not because of us, but it's also not our fault. Right?
Right.
Like, in French, you can say thanks to, as in thanks, good thanks, like grâce à, or you can say because of, which is a bad thing, right? À cause de. And so those are, and so neither of those is true with our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's a type of therapy, family therapy called contextual therapy, that talks about how the natural flow of the healthy flow in families is of the parents being bigger than the children and having resource to hand down, which is wisdom and emotional support and groundedness and financial resources. And that might just be, that you house and feed them and, those kinds of things. Doesn't mean you have to leave them a bunch of money, but that's the natural flow. And it can be really hard to be a parent when what was passed down to you was a deficit.
Yeah.
And so that's part of like how I work with my clients about their own childhoods. And how as parents themselves, if they are parents, we talk about how to heal that piece. And some of that is letting the inner child within them receive that resource that they're providing for their child now, that maybe their parent wasn't able to provide for them themselves.
And what's interesting about that, if we start to think of like parenting as the ultimate self-actualization activity, right?
I think it is.
Yeah. And particularly when we get kids who are challenging. And I've said it here before, there are, I am a skeptic, but I am also of the camp that, our children choose us, in whatever that means. I don't actually know, and I'm not going to engage in too much conversation about it, but here they are. They have showed up at our doorstep or in our arms at the hospital, right? Like we brought home, this is kind of incredible. We brought home a stranger. Like, who does that? And we agreed to clothe, house, feed, nurture, take care of, do all the things for their entire life without knowing anything about how that experience is going to go, even though we think beforehand, because it unfolds in a certain way or it looks like it unfolds in a certain way for many people, right? We think we have some idea how it's going to go. We have no idea. And so when you are confronted with a child who is so different, who is really challenging your ideas about how things are supposed to go, it can feel like it's their fault. It can feel like their behavior, their way of being in the world is wrong. And it brings up all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And what's your sense, Gabrielle, about parents? Because often when I have clients that are parents, they're like, yeah, my child struggles with this, they're sensitive or something like that. And I was like that too, actually. But it got really exiled, like it, like it wasn't okay to be that way. My parents didn't know how to handle that. And so I got socialized to look more like a dandelion than an orchid, but really I'm an orchid inside. But it's just so triggering to have this orchid kid.
Right. That's exactly it. It triggers all your stuff because now you're in a position, and thank you for bringing me back, because I feel like I went down a rabbit hole there for a second, which was,
well, that's the loveliness of working together. I love working with you because we do that for each other.
Totally. So you're in this situation where, okay, maybe you've recognized that you had this experience as a child and you want to create a different experience. But now your child, who is in themselves different from you, is not responding in the way that you would have responded, or that in the way that you want them to respond to your beautiful display of giving them what they need.
What they need.
What they need, right. Which is really, Katie, what you need. And that's so interesting. And it's this world upon worlds kind of bending in on themselves, and nobody's getting what they want or what they need or what they think they need.
Yeah. And that leads me to one of the other things I do with my clients all the time when we're doing this kind of inner child or parts work, is to say what you need, especially really young ones, what you need and what you want and what you like and what you don't like is just right, actually. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's not your fault that particular need didn't get met. Your parents or whoever was taking care of you just wasn't able to in that, at that time. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay, because I'll pick it up for you. Until and unless we accept that about ourselves, then it's very, very difficult to accept that about our children.
Right. And this is where it is, like, this is what I wanted to get to, was that breaking breaking patterns of like handing a deficit down
Mhm.
is not for the faint of heart. And my eyes leak a little bit when I say that, you know, because it really isn't. And it's so valuable to do. It's like just really priceless. It's so like, you know, when you do that, like it's like you're giving yourself grace, and you're gracing the generations to come. And you know, I'm similar to you. I'm skeptical and spiritual, and so and also I think the grace like goes backwards.
Yeah.
You know, as well. So, and also you don't have to be perfect.
Oh God, no.
I mean, it's just not possible, because that's not the definition of being a human being.
Right.
But, you know, there's this concept in kind of psychoanalytic therapy of the good enough mother.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you don't have to be the perfect mother. It's not possible. You just have to be good enough.
Today,
You don't
by
have
the
to,
way, good enough today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be variable, right? But so say more about what you mean by that, because there's something else in there that.
Yeah, no, I think I just got off a whole thing about like worry is just a waste of time, because it keeps you stuck in the past and into the future, and you're not here. So I think what I mean by that is thinking about whether you were good enough yesterday or whether you will be good enough tomorrow is also kind of a waste of time. It's like, what is good enough right now? How am I doing right now? Right?
And part of good enough is doing repair with your kids when you stumble, because of course you will, and modeling that to them and helping them learn how to do that themselves, and know that it's okay to stumble. And you know, it's not so much
okay to stumble, it's okay to apologize for it too.
Yeah. And that can be really, apology can feel really, really hard. You know, some parents, I think, I don't know how old school this is, but, you know, can think like, well, then my kid's not going to respect me if I admit to do something wrong. But actually, like, really, it really builds connection and trust and respect when you, because otherwise the kid is just left with like something happened. It felt bad or something, and I don't know what to do with this, so I'm going to make it my fault. That's basically that. I mean, that's so much of the work I do is like trying to untangle that, you know, like as opposed to like, you know, I snapped at you when we were in the car, and I'm sorry, and you know, it's not really about you. Like, yeah, there is this piece maybe, but I've had a kind of grumpy day, and I realize I need to kind of take care of myself, and it's not your fault. You know?
Yeah, 100%. There was something else that I wanted to touch on about, oh goodness. Emotional support. A lot of the work that you do is with the women, and much of the work that we do in the women's group that we run together is about giving oneself what one didn't have, right? Because we can't actually, number one, we can't depend on other people. It's not that we can't depend on them, but we can't expect to receive what it is that we need deeply from other people, because they're not inside us. They have no idea what's going on up here.
Yeah. There's some of that, but not solely from other people.
Right. And there's some of that we talked about a little bit before, like where we're trying to give our kids, you know, give them what they need. And maybe the way we want to think about that more clearly is like teach them to understand what they need and reach for it. But the reverse is also true. Our children cannot provide our emotional ballast, or they cannot provide for our emotional needs. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm really glad. I like how you said that, because I think I see a lot of people in my practice, men and women, or any gender along the spectrum, right? Who their parents ask them non-verbally to emotionally partner with them, basically. And that is like really painful. And it makes it really confusing for folks to figure out relationships in general, because it's like there's a boundary that like needs to be held, where like adult needs need to be taken care of with other adults, you know. So asking your children to kind of emotionally take care of you, what, you know, is it's really important to work to not do that.
Yeah, it's unfair. They can't do it. They can't be expected to do it. And that comes down to, at some level, I mean, this is a kind of a micro example of that, getting frustrated and snapping at your kids to stop crying about something is a tiny but very frequent and very repeated example of that. You're asking your little one, who's clearly still upset, and for whatever reason, valid or no, and it's valid because it's valid to them, right? You're asking them to change their emotional response so that you can feel better. Oops.
Yeah,
Not
as
their
opposed to
job.
like doing, yeah. And you know, in the therapy that I do, internal family systems, we talk about a U-turn, a YOU turn. So it's like stop crying, as opposed to like, okay, let me see if I can take a few moments here and try to calm my own nervous system some, or kind of calm myself so that I can be with this kiddo and not ask them to be different, and so I can be okay.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we do, again, in this kind of inner child work, is like when we get permission finally to get to those tender little ones inside. And then, you know, the person is like, oh, they feel really sad, and like maybe there's tears streaming down their face. And I say, so does it feel all right to feel this, or is it too much? I'm checking to see if they have enough calm and kind of resource to be with this little one. And when they say, no, it's okay, it's a lot, but it's okay, I say, okay, so let this little one know that you're really feeling this. And it's okay that you can be with them with this. They can let you know about this. And that's some of the reparative work that we do. So, you know, Gabriele can help you with like what to do, like, you know, as far as behavioral interventions. But a big piece that I think you probably work with folks on is like how to kind of come back to your own center.
Yeah. And some of what
And
we've been doing in the group has been that as well. And so as we
for sure.
open this group to more and more people, I'm super excited to just see what comes out of that, because so much of our emotional unwell-being, what is that called? Dis-ease.
Stress, dis-ease, distress. Yeah.
Distress is related to old patterns of not being allowed to feel our feelings. Plain and simple. We were kids. Many of us were highly sensitive at the time. Now we've got highly sensitive children who are around, who are triggering those emotions, and we weren't allowed to feel them. And guess what? We're gonna try to prevent them because we know how painful it can be. So this whole unwillingness, inability, lack of training that we don't receive, to experience what I have learned through my life coach training is the 50-50 of life. 50% of the time is awesome. 50% of the time it's completely awful.
And then there's everything in between, you know?
Exactly. And so we're not taught, by and large, how to experience negative emotion. We're trained to stop it, avoid it, eat it, watch it, and resist it.
Yeah.
And then we get into these habits. And then we are adults who are parenting children, and we teach them the same thing. unless we break that cycle. And again, to your point of trying to break that cycle, it ends up feeling, at least at first, terrifying to actually sit with a sad feeling.
And wrong, and really wrong to some parts of you. Like, this is not the way to go.
Yeah. Like we might just crumble right here.
Yeah. I got to go to work tomorrow. We may not be able to do that if we feel this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to pin it there.
Okay. I like thought of 3 things while you were talking, but
go do it. We're not going to.
Okay. Let's see if I can. I thought of them and then they were like,
do
it. Well, okay. So one thing is, feelings in and of themselves are not good or bad. They're information. And in our culture, we've labeled certain feelings as negative or bad. But they're really just information. Like, people confuse the emotion of anger for being violent, for instance.
Yes.
And you can be angry and not be hitting things, because anger is really like, information that, unless it's like something that you've been turning and burning on, but like when it is pure, it rises up in defense of something sacred, is what I learned from someone wise. It's information that like something is not okay. And for children, it's but for adults, it's like, that a boundary needs to be set or something needs to change. And it has a lot of energy to it. And so that energy actually provides the fuel to make the change that we need to make. I remember when I was in graduate school, I was like having a lot of headaches, and I was dating this guy who was in acupuncture school. And he said to me, pain is not negative. It's not a bad thing. It's just a very strong emotion. And I thought, oh my God, shut up. But now I get it, like even physical pain, but emotional pain is something to like learn, for us to keep learning how to let it move.
Oof, I think I lost you, Katie, for a second, but I think what you're going to say is move through you. And I lost you for a second. You were talking about pain moving through your body.
Yeah, my video is really distorted. Is yours okay?
Yeah, it looks okay over here.
Okay, so pain, whether it's emotional or physical, like moving, emotional is easier, I think, but moving through your body and being metabolized. So it's not just stuck there, like, in your gut or wherever.
Yeah.
Because it's there and it's waiting there until you deal with it. And so we want to clear our instruments out of our bodies and our minds, our body brains out as much as possible, so that we can just feel things as things happen. Because as you said, life is 50-50, and we're going to feel the whole spectrum of feelings, and that's appropriate. We're going to feel sad at times, we're going to feel disappointed, and to, like learn how to kind of let it flow, so that you don't have a belly full of undigested stuff sitting there.
You're carrying around all
that comes out sideways. Yeah. And feeling like you've got to do a bunch of stuff, like stay busy or eat a lot of food or drink or whatever to like keep that from coming up.
Yeah. We've been talking about the women's group, but I just want to let's talk about it more here. We have this group. It's a 6-week program right now. We do some deep shit in there. We do some deep feeling work. Some of what we've just been discussing, actually, like feeling our feelings, practicing feeling our feelings in front of other people and not just reacting to them. Having conversations that don't involve apologies.
Yeah. Um, I just love this group and I'm so excited to do more of it because um, specifically for women, you know, we're calling it our Wise Women group, um, because, you know, there's so many, and, you know, maybe it'll, I don't know. But anyway, um, so many wonderful women who are like really have a big heart for serving the world and other people in some kind of way, you know, and um, can feel, especially if a lot of these folks are like such dynamos and they've really overcome really hard, you know, hard kind of upbringings. And they're helping other people so much and, you know, kind of getting batted around, feeling batted around, I guess, um, by systems and, you know, things like that. And so one of the pieces is just to like really help each of these people really tap into their fire and keep it lit and, you know, kind of tend to the fire together and find that place that's not about being, you know, in a victim kind of feeling victimized, but like empowered, supported in community and really continuing to heal so that you can keep serving in a way that is joyful and nourishing to you and that doesn't feel like you're kind of giving a pint of blood every day.
One of the things I always say about this group is it's so nourishing. And sometimes when I step outside the container that we create each week, and it really does feel like a container that we all like climb into and sit in together, I'm always like, it's so fucking earnest in there. But it's so beautiful because it's so, there are no masks, there is no artifice. It is 100% authentic. And it is a safe space. And it has been it has been transformational for all of us who have been participating in it. And I just think those spaces are rare. And I mean, number one, you and I are goofballs and we like to have some fun. So that's all fun and good. And so it's been so easy to be doing that work with you, but it just feels really, it feels at the same time very, very light and very, very important.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That really, really sums it up. And, you know, we do a thing that's like, you know, you could call it the hot seat, but we call it the love seat. So like, you know, each session, you know, one person gets to be in the love seat and, you know, you or I work with them to help with, you know, something that's kind of getting in their way of like really kind of being aligned with their power and who they are, you know? And it's really beautiful to witness and then to see what the other folks get from witnessing that person do their own work. So
yeah,
it's
we
really
clear a lot of gunk. We definitely clear a lot of gunk. Yeah, it's very cool. And it's shocking to me actually every time how much value, and I've been in group coaching programs before. And so have you know the value of the group, even if you don't get individually coached. But it's always surprising and fun to see how much value you can get just from watching somebody else do their work for yourself. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I know this because I'm trained in systems theory and all that, but it's like some part of me is still just always kind of like amazed and just like thrilled by it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about all
the
different parts of my work. All right, now we are going to pin it.
We did. We ranged far and wide.
We did range far and wide. And so we'll probably chop this up, you
Okay.
know, but we'll see what happens. And I'm sure we will be back together. That's for sure. So thanks, Katie.
Yeah, because we have stuff to talk about.
Oh my God, please. Depending on who's listening, we'll see. All right, love. See you next time.
Okay, see ya. Thanks, Gabrielle.